Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. I am mighty glad, personally, that there are no Wednesday evening shows planned for the foreseeable future. Last night's show went very well, just like the shows on the Jumbo from Italy and the big Cabelco machine that's headed for Australia. But they really do take their toll. They're not hard work. In fact, I absolutely love doing them because it does actually give us the time and the space to tell longer and more detailed stories. But I can never, ever sleep the night after a nighttime show. I just can't switch off the adrenaline. Anyway, to all of those that tuned in last night, thank you as always. And thank you in particular to Nigel Williams, who walked away with the evening's big prize. We've got some more prizes coming up in the not too distant future, so stay tuned for that. I do realise that the content of last night's show was a bit different from our usual fare, so I'm glad that you enjoyed watching Joe Keller's story as much as we enjoyed filming. And if you missed it, if you couldn't make it last night, don't worry. You can still catch it over on our YouTube channel, or probably easier still, just go over to demolitionnews.com. Now, without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the somewhat surreal question of the day, and get this show on the road. Now, for some reason, the question of the day didn't work. Let me try it again very, very quickly. I'm just going to hop over to where I need to be. Let me try that again. Yes, it seems to have worked this time. While I'm here, I'm going to say a very quick good morning to Nigel Williams, our winner from last night, to William Forrest. Good morning, William. Andy Darvell back in the show and back in his 352, loading up trucks as we speak. It's not a bad way to spend the morning. And good morning to Jim Turner, who has just joined us as well. It is, what is it? It's Thursday, the 13th of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, breaching Barcelona's defences. We're assembling a giant in Indonesia with Liebherr Mining. And Topcon eases data flow on and off-site. Plus, we're going to see how a skid steer can be just the thing if you're in a scrape. And we'll get to all of that in just a second. But first, let us peer back through the mists of time to see what was happening on this day in history. I'm going to say a very quick good morning to Ken Hatcher, who's just arrived, who says, question of the day, confusing question. Yes. That was kind of how I was feeling this morning. And Stefan Edwards has just joined us from Facebook. Morning, Stefan. Good of you to be here. We'll come back to all of that in just a second. But first, on this day in history. On this day in 1772, Captain James Cook set off on his second voyage in search of Australia. Well-wishers were heard to shout, "You can't miss it, Jim. Enormous place filled with snakes and spiders and surrounded by sharks. You'll love it." In 1837, Queen Victoria became the first monarch to live at Buckingham Palace. In 1923, here's something I didn't know. In 1923, the Hollywood sign was officially dedicated in the hills of Los Angeles. The sign originally said Hollywood Land, but the last four letters were removed when it was renovated in 1949. Hollywood Land. Who knew? And on this day in 1978, the BBC banned the Sex Pistols song "No One Is Innocent," which is ironic given that the BBC today believes that no one is guilty. It's a whole other story. And on this day in 1985, can you believe it? On this day in 1985, the Live Aid concerts took place at Wembley in the UK and the JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. Do you remember that day when we all thought that music might just change the world? How young and naive we all were. Now, before we get into the real meat of the show, let me remind you of that question of the day. Yeah. I woke up this morning feeling fairly frivolous, and matters were made a whole lot worse by a lot of caffeine. So today's question is this: would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? I realise that sounds like something from the worst possible fever dream, but that's sometimes that's just how my brain works. Would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? Let me know in the chat, and if you can give me your reasoning, that would be very useful as well. Now, let's start the show properly, shall we? Going to say a very quick good morning to Steve Williamson and Mark Whiting, who have just pitched up. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Now, it has withstood attacks from some of the greatest football clubs in the world. It's looked down upon legendary players like Carlos Puyol, Andres Iniesta, Ronaldinho, and Lionel Messi, to name but a few. And it has been a beacon, home of some of the best football played anywhere in the world. But Barcelona's Camp Nou stadium is coming down to make way for something even more spectacular. And this is how it looks right about now. Yeah, I'd love to have filmed that in person, partly because I love any excuse to visit Barcelona, but also because when it comes to Spanish football, I'm Real Madrid all the way. Barcelona, huge enemy. I can't wait to see what the Camp Nou looks like. And if you would like to see some artist impression, go over to YouTube and type in the new Camp Nou. Really does look absolutely spectacular. It helps, of course, the fact that they're going to have a huge trophy room that's actually full up, unlike the West Ham one, which is basically full of cobwebs and a single trophy. Beggars can't be choosers. Right, some of this, I think. You might recall that we recently broke the news that Liebherr's massive R9300 mining excavator was now available for sale. That comes after the machine was shown off in prototype form at Bauma last year, and after the machine underwent extensive testing over at a mine in Indonesia. And this is how that machine was assembled in Indonesia. love Liebherr films, but I do wish they wouldn't produce them in cinemascope ratio. It looks plain weird on this show. And as someone who has occasionally built IKEA furniture, I did wonder, watching that film, whether they got to the end of that assembly and went, oh, I wonder where this bit goes. It's probably just me, right? Now, I do need to pause for a moment. I think I may even have a fanfare here. Bear with me one second. I'm just going to do this very quickly. Now that fanfare, I knew we normally only do welcome confetti, but I'm throwing out the red carpet. Frank D'Angelo, what an awesome spectacle, he says. And I can tell you that Frank, unless he's on holiday at the moment, is actually watching from Australia. Australia. People come from far and wide for this show. So, Frank D'Angelo, morning, Frank. Thank you very much indeed for being here. That is your welcome confetti. Really pleased that you could join us. The Lord alone knows what time it is in Oz at the moment, but thank you very much indeed for being here. Now, I need to play a thing, don't I? I tell you what, I'm going to go with one of these. Now, I do need to pause for just one moment because Mick Norton has just reminded me of something. Here we are. On this forum, many of us have vented our spleen on the CSCS and their abandonment of the grandfather rights scheme. On Monday, the 7th of August at 11 a.m., it is your chance to have your say, albeit for only 45 minutes. Register and let them know your feelings. Yeah, the CSCS are hosting a 45-minute webinar, which to my mind sounds like a tiny sticking plaster on a huge gaping wound, but there we are. Mick, if you have a link to that, please post it in the chat. If not, I'll have to go and dig it out myself and I'll post it on tomorrow's chat. But yes, you do have an opportunity to air your views on the abandonment and the abolition of grandfather rights on the CSCS card in the not too distant future. Now, there was a time not so long ago when construction relied primarily on pieces of paper and upon slow-moving communication. There was the hope that what was happening on the site matched precisely what it said on the drawings in the office. And there was always that big question mark over whether changes made to those drawings in the office could be communicated to site quickly enough. Thankfully, we live in an age when office to site communication takes place in real time, an age when communication between office and site now is very much a two-way flow of information. And this is Topcon Aptics.
The way construction management is typically done today involves gathering information manually. Now, with the Topcon Aptics integration platform, these manual workflows can be automated, which saves both time and money. Easily automate the distribution of schedule changes and push scheduled tasks to the field. Constructible model changes can be shared by dragging and dropping the updated model into the Aptics workflow. This allows all connected machines and rovers to receive the new constructible model file automatically. Aptics makes reporting planned versus actuals easy and automatic by collecting field activity from machine control systems and mixed fleet telematics. With Aptics, you can integrate many commonly used construction applications and machine brands. This unlocks the power of automation in construction project management, all through the Topcon Aptics integration platform.
Sorry, I was just reading the chat, and I'm so glad that somebody has bought into my ridiculous question of the day. My question of the day was: would you rather fight a horse-sized duck, or 100 duck-sized horses? Andy Darfell says, definitely a horse-sized duck. 100 duck-sized horses are the perfect size to kick you in the shins. But get behind a large duck and up on its back and a garrote to the neck, and you'll be eating duck and pancakes for a few months to come. Well done, Andy. Funnily enough, I was going the same way. Well, I had this discussion with my son last night. I was going for the horse-sized duck all day long. He, however, fancies his chances against 100 duck-sized horses. Lord alone knows what's going on. Now, I'm going to do a very quick detour, partly prompted by that Topcon film. as it brought to mind something I was mulling over on last night's show. Our prize winner, Nigel Williams, has a new podcast episode in which he's bemoaning the fact that his social media feed is filled with posts about tilt rotators. Nigel has no issue with tilt rotators themselves, and he has no issue with those posting the tilty videos either. In fact, was actually questioning why there aren't many videos from dozer and dump truck operators. And I think, having slept on it, I think I have the answer. And partly, I think, it's an age thing. Without wishing to overgeneralize, those content creators that tend to post tilt rotator films, Connor the Digger Driver, Bearded Excavation, and our very own Steve Williamson and Ed Butler, are of a certain age. They're young enough to have embraced tilt rotators, young enough to have embraced social media, and young enough to have invested in a GoPro camera to capture their activities for all to see. My guess, and it is just a guess, is that a dozer operator might be a bit more mature and a bit less concerned with all things TikTok and Instagram. That is, however, just a guess. But if you'd like to listen to Nigel's latest podcast, you can do so using the link that I'm about to post in the chat. Now, there you are, from the seat of the cab. Failing that, just go to your preferred podcast provider and just search for From the Seat of the Cab. Now, let's have some of this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
For our final film of the day, we're going to combine two of my favourite pieces of equipment. The scraper, which I love watching, and the compact track loader, one of the few items that I actually enjoy attempting to operate. Take a look at this. I have to admit, I'm quite surprised that the loader has sufficient grunt to push a scraper, but I guess tracks and that elevated sprocket design, what did Caterpillar call it? High drive? Yeah, design seems to do the trick just fine. Now, let me say, Darren Day, morning Darren, says that's pretty cool, but he also says, saying that my Cat 444 backhoe can do all of that. Fair comment. Now, I did mention the fact that CSCS are hosting a webinar, and Mick Norton has very kindly provided the link. It's in your chat right now. CSCS webinar link. It's 11 a.m. Whenever it is on the 7th of August, so a couple of weeks' time. Unfortunately, I will still be in Sicily when that's going on. So do me a favour, somebody. Let them have it with both barrels. In my good name. Let's have a look now. I just mentioned the fact that I believe that the content creation world is more geared towards things like GPS and tilt rotators and what have you, because that tends to be the younger generation. Mick Norton's come back. In 2019, the average age of a dozer operator for one particular card scheme was 51, which at that time said it all about skill fade. The age is down a tad in 2023. 51. Yeah, so if you're 51 and driving a dozer for a living, are you likely to be lurking on TikTok? My guess is probably not. Now it's time for me to vent my spleen. Here we go. After a spate of recent industry-related gripes, I'm going back to just shouting at the world in general. Now, I'm not going to get drawn into the whole legal minefield of the Hugh Edwards business. He may have done nothing wrong from a legal standpoint, but his actions were certainly not the actions of a good guy, at least in my opinion. However, the bit that gets me is that this is just the latest example of perpetrators labeling themselves as victims. There is a guy, I can't remember his name, but he's become somewhat infamous on TikTok, who stages what he calls pranks on the unsuspecting public. In one instance, he walked into the house of a family totally uninvited. The family was both outraged and quite possibly frightened, while your man found it highly amusing. When the guy in question was interviewed on Breakfast TV, he claimed he was being racially abused because he happened to be black. No, my friend. What you did would have been wrong if you were white, green, or purple. You were being held to account not because of your skin colour, but because you're an arsehole. I'm the father of 2 daughters, and I consider myself to be as close to being a feminist as it's possible to be without ovaries. But I hate to see the gender thing being used as some kind of defence. You're only saying that because you're a man and I'm a woman. No, I'm saying it because I'm right, and in this instance, you're wrong. Your gender is irrelevant. But the one that gets my goat the most, and the one which is now in play with Hugh Edwards, is mental health. As someone who has been down the path of questionable mental health a few times, I can tell you it's not a get out of jail free card. It's not something you fall back upon when you've been caught out doing something you shouldn't. And my concern with all of this is it undermines and undoes a lot of great work that's been done in recent years. I'd like to think that as a society, we've come a long way in terms of racial and gender equality, that we've become more enlightened towards mental health issues. So it's terrible to see colour, gender, sexual orientation, and mental health being used as an excuse for just being a dick. Anyway, that's my gripe of the day. I'd love to hear yours. What is it that grinds your gears, gets your goat, and generally butters your proverbial parsnips? The daily gripe therapy session will return probably tomorrow. I always seem to have something to bitch and whine about. Right, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Keep them all away from BBC presenters. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will see you immediately after a final word from our show sponsor. Please join us for the Craic. Now, I've got a little bit bored with some of our after-show music, so I'm playing something new today. Have to turn it down a bit because it does get a bit livelier as it goes along. Right, okay, let's go back to the beginning of the chat. I am going to say, while I'm doing that, I want to say a very big thank you to everybody that took part in last night's show. Went down a storm, apparently. Dan Cullen was first off the mark this morning. Good morning, Dan. Hope you're fit and well. Still up in Belper, my friend? I guess you probably are. There is Gary Muirhead. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, guys. Fabulous show again last night. Sometimes they're just easy. As I explained last night, I did interview Joe Keller twice. One purely audio, just stuck an iPhone under his nose while we were having lunch, and was so inspired by that, I thought, let's get the video camera out, and we did that the following day. Just point a camera at a guy and let him talk about his family and his family's history. Easy stuff. Hardly any editing in it either as well, which is always good news. Not Friday, but not far now yet. My opening gambit this morning was, is it Friday yet? It feels like it should be. Feels like it should be Saturday or Sunday, actually. Week's dragging. Chris Ford says, stop wishing your life away, but I know that feeling. Yeah, it's been a long old week, and there is our prize winner, Nigel Williams. Another good podcast episode from Nigel, from the seat of the cab. I've posted a link to it in the chat already, where he is bemoaning the fact that basically bemoaning the imbalance of social media. or construction equipment social media. It is his belief, and I can kind of see where he's coming from. It is his belief that the younger generation with their newfangled tilt rotators and GPS systems are front and center, while the people doing some of the sexy stuff with dozers and dump trucks and what have you, not represented there at all. As I say, I do believe it probably is down to an age thing, at least partly. Speaking of people doing bits on video, William Forrest. I'm struggling to remember. Mouse Valley Plant. I'm fairly sure it's Mouse Valley Plant. It's in Bonnie, Scotland. He is doing lots and lots of video. I'm actually seeing his TikTok videos. I'm not on TikTok. Demolition uses on TikTok, but it's not me doing it. But I get to see his TikTok videos over on LinkedIn. Very good they are too. Andy Dalvell, good morning, Mark. Sat here in my new Cat 352 loaded dump trucks with blue clay, or sticky. Well, probably not today, but sticky at times. See, now there's something I would aim a GoPro at. Cat 352 loading dump trucks. That's filmable all day long. Andy, do you have a GoPro with you? Got an iPhone with you? Please aim it in the general direction of whatever it is you're looking at. And speaking of such things, I am going to throw over very quickly to Jim Turner. Something got lost in communication or translation between myself and Jim. As you know, Jim recently visited a vintage plant fair, and I said, please aim a camera at it, and he did. But he aimed it that way. For this show, anywhere else I don't really care, but for this show, it's that way. It's always horizontal, much as you're watching this, I would assume. And there is Chris Fall saying, good morning, Dan. My question of the day, I don't know. If anybody remembers Men Behaving Badly, there was always different discussions about doing impressions of cheese and which cheese would you like to be. Well, in the same sort of light, would you rather find a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? I have not drunk this morning, and I have not smoked anything squiffy. That's just the one that occurred to me. Good morning, says Ken Hatcher, who has the usual mixed bag of Welsh weather by the looks of it. It was a great show last night. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed for that. Stefan Edwards is here as well from Facebook land. Morning to you, Stefan. Yeah, confusing and confused. Yeah, it's listen. After last night, I didn't sleep a great deal. It's the best I could come up with. Now, I wish I could identify the language in which that message was sent. It looks vaguely Greek to me, but I don't know. But I can't read it, so I can't say good morning. But whoever you are and whatever it is you said, thank you very much indeed for joining us. One that I can read is this one from Mark Whiting saying morning all. Yeah, and Steve Williamson saying exactly the same thing. Good morning to you both. Mick Norton is in the house. We'll come back to a Mick in just a second. Jim Turner liked the music that we accompanied the Barcelona song with. I was tempted to use Freddie Mercury's Barcelona with, what was her name? Big old girl, Montserrat Caballé or something like that. Remember that? When was the Barcelona Olympics? That 92, something like that? Freddie Mercury did a song for it. Yes, there are some serious high riches on there, and I did see that one of them was sign written Sloopwerken, which I'm guessing has been borrowed from somebody in maybe the Netherlands. Not entirely sure, but impressive nonetheless. And yes, some money's worth there. Yeah, I mean, high riches don't come cheap, but when you're putting 3 or 4 of them in the air, you really are talking about some serious wedge. There is Frank D'Angelo, all the way from Australia. Odd, listen, I planned some of this show. Some of it is just pure serendipity. But on the day that we have an Australian on the show, it is the day that James Cook set sail to go and try and find Australia. Now, obviously, the indigenous peoples of Australia had already found it. They knew precisely where it was because it was right there under their feet. And yet, off goes a Brit in search of Australia to claim it for king and country. Anybody's ever seen the Eddie Izzard sketch about that sort of thing? And the argument is, do you have a flag? Says the Englishman. And obviously met with consternation, put a flag in it, and now it is ours. And I think that conversation is still going on to this day. Nigel Williams, just look at them getting it smashed out. Now, I don't know what the schedule is for the demolition of the Camp Nou and the erection of the new Camp Nou. But my guess is much the same as our visit to Atalanta over in Bergamo a couple of weeks ago, is obviously you've got a close season. My guess is that the Barcelona side will be playing somewhere else close by while the new stadium is being erected. But I guess you are pretty much against the clock. So yes, hence the reason they had 3 or 4 high reaches on that. Dan Cullen is loading tractors and dump trailers today. Good to hear. Now, this is one that you do need to make a note of. And we do have the link in the chat if you want it. On this forum, many of us have vented our spleen on the CSCS abandonment of the grandfather rights scheme, which is going to impact an awful lot of people. CSCS themselves are claiming it's going to impact 7,000. Let me get this right. Did they say 70,000? And I think some people are saying it's 200,000 people. But whatever way you cut it, it's going to impact a shit ton of people. And it is now your chance to have your say. Now, bearing in mind, I'm doing this from memory, but I think the advice from CSCS is if you don't currently have an NVQ qualification to go alongside your CSCS card, you need to have done something about it by December of this year, because in June of next year, June 2024, the shift will take place. Now, I've already mentioned, and I think it was on yesterday's show, I've already mentioned my concerns in terms of I know what I'm like. I tend to leave things to the very last minute. So if you do leave it till December, are you going to get a place on a training course to upskill from your current qualification to an NVQ? And I'm saying upskill, even though it's not an upskilling, it's just proving that you can do an NVQ. Are you going to be able to get through the logjam that has created? If you are dyslexic, if you are educationally challenged, if English is not your first language, are you going to get through? It's all going to come to a head. But now is your chance, or Monday the 7th of August at 11 a.m. is your chance to have your say. That they are hosting a 45-minute webinar. I would strongly suggest that anybody that is currently a CSCS card carrier and you don't currently have an NVQ, copy the link out of the chat and make sure you pitch up for that. Even take an hour off work to make sure that you vent your spleen on that. My personal feeling is I get the impression that CSCS have been kind of badgered into this, and I think having been badgered into it and having now actually put their head above the parapet, I think they are beginning to see not the error of their ways, although it is the error of their ways, but I do wonder if this is something that we could potentially turn back the tide upon. So if you would like to be part of that turning of the tide, Monday the 7th of August, 11 a.m, your chance to have your say. Andy Dovell, who as far as I know is the only person to have answered my ridiculous question of the day, and he fancies his chances against a big horse-sized duck. Apparently he tends to carry a garrote around with him, and he's going to be eating duck and pancakes for months to come. That would have been my inclination. I am terrified of horses. I realise it's an irrational fear, but the teeth just scare the bejesus out of me. I am not scared of ducks, even a duck that is as big as a horse. I think they're going to be fairly slow moving, what with big webbed feet. I don't find beaks particularly intimidating. I fancy my chances against a horse-sized duck. 100 duck-sized horses, however, I think they're going to inflict quite a bit of damage before I can see them off. Yes. This is. We could rename this show as Dad Joke Central. Question of the day. Chris Wall says he would fight the horse-sized duck, but he would need a lot of orange sauce, be quackers to fight 100. Well said. Ed Butler's in the house. Good of you to join us, Ed. Thank you very much indeed for being here. How is Welsh Wales this morning? I hope you're all well. There is Mick Norton with the link to that CSCS webinar. As I say, go fight your corner. Doesn't impact me. Frankly, I mean, I do care which way it goes, but it won't impact me at all. But it will impact an awful lot of people in the industry. So if you do get an opportunity to have your say, please do so. I think people tended to like the the skid steer scraper. There's Darren Day saying pretty cool, but he can also do that with his 444 backhoe loader. Yes, you certainly can. I found that very interesting. In 2019, the average age of a dozer operator for one particular card scheme was 51, which at the time said it all about skill fade. The age is down a tad in 2023, but think about that. 51. We've had, I've seen this up close and personal, where you've had predominantly the explosive engineer side of things within the demolition industry. Most of the explosive engineers that we have relied upon in the UK are now either in their late 60s or 70s. It's a skill that we are basically losing because we're not bringing up another generation of explosive engineers, and those that are currently explosive engineers will fall off the end of the conveyor belt. Looks like we're looking exactly the same with dozer operators. My guess would be exactly the same with scraper operators, with big dump truck operators. Ken Hatcher says he is 53. You're but a child, Ken. Mick Norton, posing on... Okay, so posing on social media with the latest earth-moving ancillaries is no more than a marketing ploy. What I would like to see is a training provider, tester, trainer, instructor demonstrating in the classroom and practically the relevant application for a group of novices who need to know the drills. I think that's all valid, and there are some. I mean, Steve Williamson does some educational content. Ollie Guns does some educational content, but it does tend to be at the smaller end, and it does tend to be this sort of modern type of stuff. I personally, and I'm equally guilty. I tend to try and get all of our video content down to about 2.5-3 minutes maximum, because attention span, and trying to limit the length of the show to under an hour generally, and that kind of thing. So I'm equally guilty of it. But I do honestly think that there's a huge gap in the market for somebody to do a longer form on-site video, not time lapsed and not fancy angles, but here is a job going on, and here is what's happening, and here is me explaining what's happening and why it's happening. I do think there's a lot to be said for that. Andy Darville does have a GoPro. I'll have to get it mounted up. Yeah, do that. I'll tell you now, from my point of view, if you're on a Cat 352, stick a GoPro behind your head for a little while. Stick it on the side window so you can see you and your levers and stuff, and maybe out the window. And then when you've done that, mount it on the front of your windscreen, looking out at what you're doing. Bung the whole lot into a timeline, upload, job done. Simple as that. And you could do that daily and become internet famous, if that's the kind of thing you're into. Before I actually read this out, you kind of have to understand what I'm looking at on my screen. Your comments are quite small, and I do wear reading glasses. These, as you can tell, are not reading glasses. So when I press the button to actually upload your comments, I don't generally see what they've said before. It's caught me out a few times, not much, but it's caught me out on this occasion. Question of the day from Mick Norton. What do you call a duck that breaks into a plant yard and steals a 360 wheeled excavator? A robber ducky. Everyone a gem. I think I'll be the judge of that. Just a bit of additional information on the Barcelona. The White High Reach on the right is a Dutch machine from Lek Sloopwerken, says Stefan Edwards. Thank you very much indeed. I had guessed at Dutch. Sloopwerken did sound very Dutch to me. For those of you that are into your football, you will know that there is a very strong Barcelona Dutch connection. They've had, I can think of at least 2 Dutch managers they've had, Ronald Koeman and the great Johan Cruyff. So there has always, and I think Ruud Gullit played there, Marco van Basten played there, Frank Rijkaard played there. There is, and I'm sure this has got nothing to do with it, but there does seem to be a very strong link between Barcelona and the Dutch. Maybe that's had something to do with it. Who knows? Question of the day is going to be stuck in my mind with confusion all day. Cheers, Mutt. Sorry about that, Ed. I've tried to come up with something equally ridiculous at some point. Jim Turner says, I'd have to go for the 100 duck-sized horses because the bill for a horse-sized duck would be massive. Yeah, but not as threatening as teeth. Not as threatening as teeth. Steve Williamson says, doesn't take much to confuse you, Ed Butler. Ah, yes. The bromance rivalry continues. I have an Instagram channel for my high reach work. It's demo_darv_UK. I'm going to go and take a look at that. Andy, let me know if I find anything that I quite like the look of. I might actually feature that on the show. I'll go and take a look. Look forward to seeing that. Darren Day says, Steve Williamson, he was stood talking to you at Plantworks for 25 minutes before I told him you weren't real. Not sure what that means. Okay. Steve Williamson, that's what the wife says. Yes, easily confused. Hi, guys. Sorry, bloody airlock in the machine. Yeah, perfect timing. Ed Butler says, I'm currently working in the beautiful Cotswolds. Oh, you're a lot closer to me than you normally are. Enjoy. Give my regards to Jeremy Clarkson while you're there. There's not much young ones on dozers because young ones nowadays don't have a set of balls to operate one, says Steve Williamson. Sweeping generalisation, but hey, it's never stopped me. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. You can see what it is. I'm guessing that is maybe Indian or something. But good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Hey, brother, did you get any alien things when you dug? No idea what that means. Chris Baker is unbelievable tester. He makes sure your site ready. Dan Cullen, question of the day. I don't know what to say. I'm speechless. Not often I render Dan Cullen speechless. The Steve Williamson mannequin at Plantworks and Ed being dim. Ah, yes, okay. Yes. I did have a chat with the Steve Williamson mannequin. Got as much sense out of that as I do the real thing, to be perfectly honest, but that's a whole other story. Steve Williamson, Darren was on about Ed talking to the mannequin. Yeah. If anybody missed that, and I knew it was happening in advance, but even having known it was happening in advance, I was just bowled over by it. Obviously, Ed Butler and Steve Williamson do tend to travel together. They hunt in packs, they come in a pair. They've been at Balmer together, they've been at Craic together, but unfortunately, Steve Williamson was on his honeymoon when Plantworks rolled around. So Ed went out and got himself a mannequin, dressed it up as Steve Williamson, and had it stood there watching while he was working. And I have to say, it was very, very lifelike. Apart from the drawn-on beard, but apart from that, very, very lifelike. But an absolute hoot. Well done, Ed, on that. Right, people. I think that's going to do us for today. Last night is catching up with me. I'm going to go and sit in a dark room for a little bit and drink some tea. I'll be back for the final time for this week on tomorrow's show. Got some good stuff for you tomorrow, including something from NASA. Not every day we say that. So if you fancy a bit of that, please join us at 10 a.m. tomorrow for the final breakfast show of the week. But also make sure you try to get yourself tuned into that CSCS webinar that Mick Norton has kindly given us the link to. We're going to be well worth it, I think. As I say, if we could possibly turn the tide, or even give ourselves a bit of breathing room, because as I say, I know what I'm like. I think I would leave it, and then December would roll around, and you go, oh bugger, I need to apply for an MVQ, and then you find there's a log jam that you can't get actually through a training course before the barrier comes down. There's going to be a lot of people caught out, so don't be one of them. Make sure you tune into that webinar on the 7th of August, 11 a.m. The link is in the chat. If you need it again, drop me a line, email or whatever, or maybe via WhatsApp, and I'll send you the link separately. And my final point of the day, I'm going to leave you with the words of Dan Cullen. Have a wonderful day, guys. Yes, please do have a wonderful day, guys. I'll see you on the morrow. Till then, have a good one. All the best.